its innovations. Let's talk about Android. Let me make an introduction. I think it's not necessary, it's ubiquitous, but it's an OS for smartphones developed by Google. It's an open source project, and this is the OS that many hardware manufacturers have used. These are the most well-known brands like Asus, HTC, Sony, etc., but there are many more. So what we have is a situation where we have a company that specializes in software and services, produces software and services, and companies specialized in hardware, and they do this. This is a good combination. It was so interesting that in the description of this presentation we said that we'll look at news about the most successful operating system in the world. Why do we say so? Fernando Paniza, who gave the same presentation in previous years, always showed a number to measure the success of the platform, and that number was the market share in smartphone OS. Of all smartphones sold worldwide, which is a larger number in absolute terms, what share accounted for Android devices versus all the other OS for other smartphones? This percentage grew. It was half in 2011. It was almost 85% last year. And Fernando every year told us, well, this is going to stop there. This is a tremendous percentage, and he always got it wrong. This year, the percentage did not grow. It went stable. It went down 2 percentage points in the first 2 quarters of 2015. So over 4/5 of the smartphones that are sold worldwide have Android. Since 2013, the devices, and we are not talking about smartphones. This includes smartphones, tablets, PCs, notebooks. The devices that run Android have been selling more than any other OS combined. This includes Windows, iOS, macOS, etc. And in fact, yesterday, in one event for the press, Google said that Android is now used by 1.4 billion people worldwide. These are active users. They entered the Google Play Store application in the last 30 days. Now, this success, which is so amazing, was accompanied by this phenomenon called fragmentation. That's why the Android is scared. The diagram shows that there are so many other devices from so many different brands that none of them prevails. There are many, and they are different in terms of hardware, screen, resolution of screen, size of screen, sensors, even different in the OS, because Android is open source and manufacturers can make changes and distribute with changes. In fact, the figure in absolute terms is even more overwhelming. There are 24,000 different Android devices from over 1,500 manufacturers worldwide. For some people, this may pose a problem. It is a problem for developers because you have to try different types of devices. Now, for Android and the users, it's a strength, so much so that the slogan of Android adopted last year is they are celebrating diversity, and they say be together, not the same, which means let us not be alike. All devices with different characteristics, and the good thing about it is that the user can choose any he likes. In fact, Google rented one of the most important electronic posters. This is in Times Square in New York. The screen is over 100 meters length and 25 meters high with millions of pixels. So that diversity is also seen in different ways. First, Android is no longer an OS only for smartphones. You have wearables. Android Wear is a variable of Android for intelligent watches. And here again we have different manufacturers. We have Asus, LG, Samsung, Motorola, etc. We have round screens, square screens, different sensors. We also have Android TV. This is a variant in Android for 10-foot interfaces. I don't interact directly with the screen, it's far away from me, and therefore the interface has to be different. All the smart TVs by Sony, Sharp, Philips and other manufacturers in 2015 already have Android TV incorporated. There are some media companies that have used Android TV for their consoles as a platform for traditional consoles that are connected to the TV set or for portable micro consoles. It used Android as a platform for all the gaming line. This is a Shield line. We also have Android Car. This is a version of the Android OS for entertainment in your car. You have different functionalities. There are icons for navigation, maps, communication, calls, messages, entertainment, music. This is available for Hyundai vehicles, Honda Civic, Chevrolet for the year 2015 have incorporated this technology. And of course, the smartphones. Diversity reigns over the smartphones. All of them have three-level brands. One is Moto E, Motorola. It's a cell phone that would cost $100 and the hardware is very respectable. The price of three-level devices are becoming more and more accessible to the public in general. Each company has a flagship or high-standard telephone. There are devices called ruggedized. They are designed to resist humidity, water, dust, to be used in industrial environments. And then we have manufacturers who have very elegant designs. This is the Sharp Apples on the right. But as Android is open source and manufacturers can do different things with it, adapting it to its needs, I want to show you two examples to see how important innovation is around Android. Yota phone is on the left. Ryota is a Russian communications company. This smartphone has two screens, one on top, one behind it. The front screen is standard, like that of any cell. The back screen is electronic ink, e-ink as it's called. It's in the Kindles of Amazon. The characteristic is that it's very good to read text and consumes little battery. So you can switch the mode to use the telephone. You can use both sides. If you want to read a book, you use the e-ink. Otherwise, I use the other part. So with the black part, the battery lasts longer. On the right, we have Robin by Nextbit. It was recently founded by former Apple and Google employees and one of the leaders in HPC design. And Robin is not so innovative in terms of hardware, but in terms of software. They say it's the first cloud-first smartphone. I think it's the only one. This is a telephone that always has room. We would love to have that. It's simply, each telephone has an account in the cloud that is connected to it. So old content and the pictures I take, old pictures disappear from the device. I only have the thumb tags. And if I want to look at those pictures, when I touch the thumb, I download it from the cloud. This happens with the pictures and with applications. All of us have applications that we install once and we never use them, or very seldom use them. So if I'm not using the applications for some time, the telephone learns my behavior, and I get the icon, and if I press the icon, the application is recovered from the cloud as if it had always been there. One interesting thing about these two phones, they were partially funded by crowdfunding. This is donation crowdfunding, individuals who donated money. The Yota phone in Indiegogo and the Robin in Kickstarter. The Kickstarter by Robin is still open. This was last week's information, and both by far exceeded their funding objectives. If you want something more conventional, I suggest the Samsung Galaxy Note. It comes with a pencil, which is a revolutionary invention. Someone, for the first time, decided to add a pen to the smartphone. And in terms of the application market, there is one market, the Play Store, that has over 1.6 billion applications, and there are alternatives, Amazon apps, Android, Samsung Galaxy apps, and so on. Let's now talk about Android development. Many of us are developers or want to be so, and therefore one of the characteristics of developing for Android is that the field of things we need to take into account is a little bit different. In the first place, we have different releases of the OS, like Android 5.0 Lollipop. We have changes that take place in parallel. We have development guides. We design things to do, not to do, things that change in a dynamic way. We have Google Play services, a set of services available for all applications, which is updated outside the Android cycles. And we have a super ecosystem. Maybe this expression is contradictory, but anyway, this is a group of companies that either provide services used by the applications, or we have a tremendous amount of open source projects to develop extensions and controls for Android. For example, AutoCAD, and then companies, for example, dominant platforms like Facebook that provide services that the application can use. But going back to the OS itself, all Android versions, at least from 1.5 Cupcake, they have the name of a different dessert. So this year we were wondering what's going to be the next name. And that was revealed at a Google event, the Google I.O., that takes place in San Francisco every year at the Moscone Center, which is a convention hall. And this year, Sundar Pichai, which is Google's CEO, presented the news. Android Marshmallow, 6.0 Marshmallow. So this is the version that at the time was in beta, in developer preview, and yesterday its release was announced. It will get to the first devices next week. So first change in this knowledge base, the Android with a lollipop disappears and the one with a marshmallow comes in. What are the news he brings? Several. In the Google I.O., we summarize the new innovations in the new Android version. The code name was M, and the news were presented in these 6 groups. A new app permission, the other 2 have to do with web experience and app links. We also have a new mobile for payment, fingerprint support, and new standards for energy and power preservation and charging. And this is going to be standard now in all Android telephones. The app permission caused a little bit of concern in the developers community, because the applications had been developed since November 2007, and many changes were announced. As we are the GeneXus community, one of our functions is to simplify this, to isolate it from other changes that may risk or complicate development. Let's see what are the news at the level of GeneXus to support Android 6 Marshmallow. The first news has to do with permits. The experience of installing an application in Android, if I click here, I see this dialog. This dialog means that when it is installed, the application wants permits that it will need during its execution. In this case, the permits are not many. I may find something like this. This is not unusual. The application asks for all kinds of permissions. This is what the screen tells me. Waze is an application that has to do with traffic. Why do they want a microphone or SMS? This is a problem for the user because it makes the consumer a little hesitant. And it's also a problem for developers because in a very competitive world, such as the one of mobile communications, if someone goes there and clicks install, I don't want the person to be anxious or hesitate. The less friction in the process to install the application, the better. So what happens if you install the application of event in Android 6.0? This is what happens. It never asks for permission. The version of GeneXus Meeting in the store was developed with this permit framework in mind. So what does it mean that I grant permission without authorization? No, the permits are declared, but they are not activated or granted by the user. So what happens? When you get to a point in the application where the permit is necessary, the application should say, do I need your location to do what I'm going to do? And the user decides according to what he wants, or according to what the application will do. He can deny or allow permission. This is very revolutionary. Nobody ever thought about this kind of scheme. Anyway, even though Salto already has the support for permissions to be requested at the time you access the APIs, they ask location for the APIs, we're going to integrate something else, is APIs for us to request permission or to learn about their status quo at any point in time. And the reason for this is that the request for permission should be at a logical time for the user, when the user is more likely to say yes. So this is like a decision-making matrix. If the permission is critical for the operation of the application and it's obvious that we need the permission, for example, install messages, and it says, I need to access your contacts or your SMS. In this case, the correct thing would be to ask for permission right away without explaining why, and when the application is executed for the first time. Now, if the permit is secondary, it's not critical, and what's more, if it's not clear whether granting that permission will give some benefits to the user or what the application will do with that, we suggest educate in context. Before asking for permission, say, I will ask you for permission to do this because you will get this in return. For example, a map application says, if you allow me to your location, I can show you the closest restaurant. These are then some of the main innovations in Android Marshmallow. Many more are oriented to developers or to users. These are the most important ones, and I wanted to highlight them. GeneXus is ready to use this new permission scheme. In GeneXus Evolution 3, we also support Android 6.0 with a former permission scheme. Now, moving into development, the most important thing is to talk about material design. You've heard about material design. This is a new design language, a metaphor for design, both for mobile and web applications. It was launched by Google in the Google I/O last year, and it's based on these three main principles: the metaphor of materials, a graphic style that is bold, and motion providers for more meaning. Matías Duarte, as you see, he's always wearing original shirts. He's the father of material design, or at least the attempts. For Google, he said that in less than a year since it appeared, there were over 200,000 applications responding to this scheme, which was more than 1/3 of all applications released this year. And of course, this does not only include Google applications that were the first to adopt it, but others very popular like Dropbox, New York Times, etc. Material design is a very large standard covering many things. Many of them can be used with a Salto version. The event application was inspired on material design. You have a drawer, elevation concept, also colors, also accent color. All elements that are interactive will have the same color, so you can identify them. In the video in the middle, you see the feedback of interaction with all the controls. You have tabs and so on. And once again, we are adding many of these things. Many are available. Others will be added over the development of the night builds. And of course, you probably heard Federico Assato, but we have this available for Android, and this is good for us because we will have an interesting interface. Going to Google Play services, as I said, this is a set of services that applications have available. This is available in all Android versions if you have a Play Store. The frequency for updating is bi-monthly or every quarter. And two things I would like to highlight. One is the Places API. Google, as part of its project in Maps, has an enormous database of points of interest and business on a world level. So in GeneXus, we replaced the old geolocation selector using one based on Places API. And when I'm choosing a point on the map, it's not arbitrary. I'm looking for a business or a building which is already in the database. Places API has other functionalities that we will add gradually, like the possibility of having new points into this global database, or given the location to let us know which business I am in. The other technology is rather new. We have not yet incorporated it. It's called Google Nearby. Nearby is a set of services oriented to make applications react on the basis of where they are located. This is like geolocation, but we add the concept of beacons. Beacons are small devices that issue a radio signal. So, for example, at all bus stops, I put beacons. So when I get to the bus stop, my cell phone will identify the beacon and it will know where I am, and he can proactively show the schedule for different buses coming to that stop. Nearby also helps different intelligent devices to connect to one another and exchange content. Moving on to news regarding the more extended ecosystem, Parse is a company that provides cloud services. One is the delivery of notifications, like Mexican Soccer League. This is based on Parse to send notifications. We have also support in Android and iOS. We have other providers of notices. If I have ads, I can also use Mobfox, and there are many others. And for Facebook, we have a possibility of having a login in applications that do not use GAM and provide security, so we can have a login in other types of end users, for example, by pushing buttons. Before closing this point, I would like to talk a little bit about native and web mobile, but not in the traditional way, like putting these two as opposing fields. Mobile is better, native is worse, and so on. No, I would like to say that native applications are having a global success. However, there are some characteristics of the web mobile that got lost in native applications. And I have two in particular. One is the possibility of creating links between two applications. In the web, this is so easy that I don't realize when I click in a link and I go to another site, but that's not so common in the mobile. And the other is a search. When you search the internet, that is solved in the internet. How do I transmit these two good characteristics for the users to native applications? The links. This is a scenario. I have the event application on my phone. Oh, I get this mail and says, go attend this one, this is interesting. And they send me a web link. I click here and says, what application do you want to open? As I have this, I can open it and I mark it as a favorite, and I hope you did this with my presentation, where I'm competing with Marcos to see who has more favorite. This is the deep links concept in mobile. The same web links, but they are deep links in the application as well. If I already have the application installed, it will open my application. If not, it will take me to the website. And another step is Google App Indexing. It scans the content of the application, which is web, and it connects it through metadata in the web application or in the native mobile application. And I go from one search to finding the content in an application. So let me give you a scenario. I'm looking for it in my telephone. I look for the name of a film that I want to see it as soon as possible. And it tells me, these are the web results of your search. And in particular, if you go to this application, you will find relevant content according to what you want. So I go to that application, I go to the Play Store, I install it. And you will see that the button that says open, it says now continue, because as I press it, it will take me to the relevant content according to my search within the application. And of course, if the application is installed, the middle step is omitted. I go from the web result to the mobile native result. This is something that Apple, Google, and Microsoft are promoting with differences. But when the three big ones agree on something, that's probably important, and we believe it is important, so we will incorporate it in the Salto version. In closing, I would like to add, for those of you who have not tried GeneXus Salto, do it. It has many new features. These are some of the news regarding the Android generator. I didn't have time to mention them all. I only mentioned 2 or 3. There are many others, so I invite you to experiment and to report your impressions to us. And please remember that GeneXus is not developing just for one platform. With GeneXus, you can develop for all successful platforms at the same time. See you again in the next meeting.